The public willingness for nuking Iran. American citizens must get over their gormless view of their criminal government's next war. The US seems set to launch airstrikes on Iran and is now preparing for a war that lasts for weeks, according to latest reports. It is conceivable that this will be contained. Either the Iranians will calibrate their response after a show of force, or the US, which is building up a massive armada, will have sufficient weaponry to destroy the Iranian government. I oppose any use of force. Even the very limited Trump-Netanyahu 12-day war last year was horrible. Hundreds dead, nuclear diplomacy, which was working, abandoned, and the US gleefully deceitful. But what is upcoming in the next few weeks is set to be on a new order of magnitude. I won't run through the various scenarios. Suffice to say that Iran has significant military missile capacity and will almost certainly strike Israel hard. Netanyahu says Israel can absorb 700 missiles. What he left unsaid is that Iran has many more missiles than this. So what if Israel is overwhelmed by Iranian strikes? This what if is hardly even speculation. It is considered a real probability by mainstream analysts. It's what happened last June and may even have led Israel to ask the Americans to end the war for them. John Mersheimer claims Israel privately pushed Trump for a ceasefire. He certainly brokered one in direct contact with Netanyahu. No one wants to use ground troops, explicitly. If the US and Israel face defeat, nuclear escalation then would, from a purely military perspective, quickly turn the tide. I recently came across an excellent article by Scott Sagan and Benjamin Valentino in International Security. They established that the apparent long-term decline in Americans' approval of nuking Hiroshima and Nagasaki does not demonstrate a robust nuclear taboo or a deep commitment to civilian immunity. Polling data shows that approval for President Truman's decision to drop the bomb fell from 85% in 1945 to 46% in 2015, and that more people now prefer a demonstration strike than they did in 1945. However, the authors establish that these trend polls are misleading because they don't go into the details that actually matter. They ran a YouGov survey experiment in July 2015, presented a hypothetical war in which Iran violates the Iran nuclear deal. The US imposes sanctions, Iran attacks a US carrier with 2,403 US dead. The US retaliates, a ground invasion stalls, and then the president must choose between continuing the ground war to take Tehran at the cost of 20,000 more US troops expected to die, or bombing a major Iranian city deliberately to force surrender. The city option was varied. A nuclear strike killing 100,000 civilians, a nuclear strike killing 2 million civilians, or conventional bombing killing 100,000 civilians. The results were stark. There was majority approval for bombing a city in all conditions by the American respondents, including nuclear use. Approval stayed around 60% even when the nuclear strike killed 2 million civilians, and even when the attack was described as deliberately targeting civilians. With 2 million civilian deaths, a slim majority preferred the ground war, yet approval for the nuclear strike still hovered near 60%, a kind of rally around the bomb effect. Conventional mass killing was often more popular than nuclear. Many respondents preferred conventional bombing killing 100,000 civilians over a nuclear strike with the same toll, which suggests the public's aversion is less about civilian immunity and more about nukes as precedent, or sort of the ick factor. Support also increased significantly with Republican identification, older age, and support for the death penalty. Women were no less willing than men to support these strikes. In some scenarios, women were more supportive. They then added a third option: end the war by allowing Ayatollah Khamenei to remain as a spiritual figurehead with no political power, avoiding both US troop deaths and Iranian civilian deaths. Only about 41% chose the diplomatic deal. 40% still preferred nuking the city rather than compromise on unconditional surrender, which suggests pure bloody vengeance, hubris, and assorted nastiness are important factors. A poll around the same time found that 30% of Republicans and 19% of Democrats were supportive of bombing Agrabah, the fictional city in Aladdin. I usually focus on the violence of elites. Polling can also be gamed by framing and context. But after half a century of anti-Iranian propaganda, the US public's unwillingness to oppose war is yet another factor that makes this spring look like a perfect storm. It's hard to see Donald Trump, himself, let's remember, one of those elderly Republicans who supports the death penalty, building up such a navy only to make a deal and sail off home again. If he does, it would be a remarkable about-face, and history might even judge him a peace president, albeit an unconventional one. But the odds point instead to a war that none of the parties can fully control, the kind of regional conflict that draws in powers far beyond the initial battlefield.